Welcome back to Design Build Launch, the free course where we're building a professional portfolio website with Framer. Today is part 4, where we're going to finish off the rest of the landing page and build out all of the sections. If you missed the last video where we created this hero section with these interactions and mouse cursor, the link for that video will be in the description or on the screen now. So make sure you're caught up for today's video. Let's go ahead and get started. This text section is the next section we're going to do, and this is going to be a bit of an interactive section where we're going to have different things highlight that we want to focus on in our paragraph. So what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate the hero section and then just grab all of the content inside and delete it. And then I'm going to change its name to text section, or you could do the about section, whatever you want. And we need to make sure that everything here is the way we want it. 100% width, 100% viewport. Min height of 700 works fine. The first thing I want to do is I want to set the darker black colored fill. So that was 900. First, let's set up that stickiness. So what we can do is if we hit play right now, you can see as I scroll, this section is not sticky. It's just moving up out of the way. We don't want that. So to do this, we'll grab the hero section. We originally had this positioned at relative, that's default. We're going to change this to sticky, and then we can set how much we want it to stick at the top, like how far down we want it. So if we wanted it to stick 1,000 points down from the top, we can set that. But for now, we're just going to set it to 0 because we just want it to stay right where it is. So I'm going to hit play one more time, and you'll see this section now slides up over top. Now you'll see it broke our page now because we're not 100% viewport, and that's an easy fix. All we have to do is just go make sure this is set to 100 again, and then as you see, we have our sticky section. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check what our nav links and logos Z index is. It's 8, so that's good. So let's go ahead and set this in the text section just so that we don't have any issues later on. We have nothing over 3 in the hero, so we're going to go with 3 there. That's just for an extra step of precaution. Now let's add the text. So T on the keyboard, and once again, I'm going to type in a bunch of gibberish. We're going to go to our styles, and this is going to be in our heading to size font. Let's go ahead and remove that style so we can begin to edit this and make it unique. I'm going to set it to a 400 gray color. And since this is a paragraph, let's drop it down to regular weight and bump up the line height to, let's go with 1.4, a happy medium there. And then I'm just going to paste in our text. So for the size on this for now, we're going to set it to fill, and then the height will be to fit content. Let's also make sure this is left aligned, but I want to put some spaces here so it looks like it's tabbed in. I think I went with about 8 there. You can go with whatever you want. And then let's add some padding to this section. So I'm going to break the padding that we've been using, and instead of having 32, we're going to go with something like 160 on the sides. So for the right, we'll set that, and same for the left. And the reason I'm doing this is if we go back to our Figma design, I don't want this to stretch all the way out here. I want it to be a little bit more inside, so it kind of breaks up the flow of the website. So not everything is harshly aligned here on the sides. So to set this up, let's create this as a component. So right click, create component, and we'll call this about text or whatever you want, and hit create. The reason we did this is to have multiple states of this text, aka variants. So I'm going to add 3 variants. So I'm simply just going to hit the plus until I have 3. And then I'm going to call the first one default, the second one first highlight, and the final one second highlight. So what we need to do now is what changes between the default state and the first and second. So what's going to happen is I want Figma to have a green color. And then I want to add an underline to that. So under text, you can hit the plus on the right, go to decoration, and that allows you to set the underline here. So that will highlight the word Figma. And then in the next one, I'm going to do the same thing for Framer. Now, if we go back to the home page, what we need to do is set this text now to sticky. So we'll swap that over to sticky. Of course, you want to make sure its parent section has the overflow set to visible as well. And with that, let's set the sticky to 256. We're just going to put it about halfway down the screen here, and it's going to stick 256 points from the top. Now, so we can see this, I'm going to grab the text section and I'm just going to set a new height value of something pretty large, like 2000 pixels. And if we hit play now, the text comes up over top. And then when this gets 256 points from the top, it's going to stick while the rest of the section keeps scrolling down. So that's how that's going to work. So I'm simply going to undo that and put it back to 100 VH for now. So to get this thing to actually change, we need to select our component, go to Effects, and add a scroll variant. For the trigger, we're going to say when this section is in the view, and I want to say at the middle, so when the text is around the middle of the screen. I do want this to be able to replay, aka when you scroll back up, it kind of reverses. And then we need to set the section and the variant. Well, we don't have any section IDs, so we need to create those. So let's go ahead and create the first one for a default, and we'll grab the text section itself, and all the way down at the bottom, there is a scroll section. We can hit plus on that and give this an ID. I'm just going to call it text section because that's what I have here in the layers. So now if I go back to our component, we can choose the first one as text section. So now we need to add 2 more sections to change the variation of this text. And how we're going to do that is with a spacer. It's just a blank object. So I'm going to hit F on the keyboard and drag out a frame. I'm going to make sure this is below my text. And I've just played around with this a little bit to get these values of kind of how I want the scroll to look. So you can modify this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's still going to work if you just have this like it is and put a little bit more spacing in between. So for mine, I'm going to go with fill just because I want it to fill the page. Why not? And for the height, I'm going to go with 700 pixels. Then I'm going to remove the fill and set the opacity to 0. So it is not visible whatsoever. But the thing we really need to make sure we do is go down here to the scroll section and give this an ID. I'm going to call this text change 1. And then I'm going to duplicate it with Command D. And this one I'm going to call text change 2. And now you'll notice this section is breaking, and that's simply because the text section is no longer tall enough for this amount of content since it's only 100% of the viewport. So instead what we want to do is fit to content, and that will make this look a lot better. Now we need some padding from the top of this. So if we go down to padding, we can say 256. Which is the same amount we're going to have it stick, which will look really nice. And then what we need to do is go back to our component, go to our variant, and then we can add a new section. So when it gets to text change 1, we simply want to change it to first highlight. When it gets to text change 2, we want to set it to second highlight. And that's it. So we hit play. As we scroll down, right now it's in our default state. And as I keep scrolling, it gets to Figma. Keeps going down to Framer, and then eventually it will release and move on to the next section, but we don't have anything below it. For the next section, we have a video that's going to go here, and it's going to be 100% viewport height, and then we need to add our custom cursor. So what I'm going to do is just drag out a frame, and I'm going to call this video section, and then I'm just going to drag it in to our desktop there and just make sure it's below the text section. So what we need to do is set it to fill, so it's 100% width, and then we will do the viewport at 100 VH. And again, we have that minimum height at 700 on our section, so we'll add that so the section can't shrink past that. Let's add a quick layout to this of a vertical and make sure everything else is centered. We don't need any gaps and no padding. To add a video, all we have to do is go up to Insert in the top left, and then we can go down to Media. They have all kinds of different things here you can add in Framer, but we're going to add a normal video, so I'm just going to click on that, and that will just throw this here, and I'm going to drag and drop it into our video section. I'm going to remove this fill off of this section, and let's go ahead and have the video fill this entire section. To do so, I'm going to wrap it with a frame. So let's right click, add frame, and that's going to wrap one around it. And let's just call this video frame for now. This is going to be for later when we create our link and our cursor effect. We do need that around it. And we're going to set that frame to a fill, so 1 fraction on the width. And I'm just going to say 100 VH for the height to match the parent section. And the video, I'm just going to make its relative So with that, everything should work fine. If I go ahead and hit preview, scroll down, we have this nice video section here. Now you'll see that it's not over top of our home section. This is actually pretty cool, but we don't want it to do that. What we want to do is we want to go to the video section and make sure the Z index, so style Z index is at 3. Now that will not happen. And we need to make sure all of our sections from now on have that Z index of 3, or we will always be able to see through it and see this original section because it's still stuck there. So with a video element, you can scroll down here and you have a URL option or upload. So when we hover over this, we want our cursor to change, which means we need a new state. Let's go up to our cursor component and double click on this to open it up. And we're going to go over here and simply select one of these and then add variation. And we'll call this, I'm going to call it Explore Designs because that's what our cursor is going to say inside of it. So we're going to go over here to the radius, bump that back up to 1000 to make it a perfect circle, and set this to a 192 in width by 192 in height. And then we can remove our fill and then add a green color. So we'll go to our primary and add that back. And then now we're going to add a text inside of this. So we're going to hit T on the keyboard and we're just going to type in some text there. And this cursor is not going to change in size at all. So I'm just going to make sure I align this centered. I'm not going to actually add a layout to the cursor. We're only going to have like one piece of text. So let's go to the text and set this to our body. Then I'm going to break that link and set it to bold and a line height of just 1. It's only going to be 1 line of text. And then for the color, it can either be 900 or 800. It doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to type in a left square bracket and then finish it off with a right square bracket just for a cool aesthetic. And I'm going to make sure this is again positioned in the middle. So now we have our new cursor. If we go back to the video section, I'm just going to select the video. And when we're hovering over this video, we want to go and add a custom cursor. And we want to select the cursor and we want it to be replace on this one. Since I don't want it to follow the cursor, I actually want to replace it. And I want to change the variant to Explore Designs. And we don't need a transition because it's just going to mimic our mouse movement. So if we hit play now and we scroll down, you'll see our cursor when it gets in the section immediately changes to the Explore Work section. Now, one thing I'm not liking is as we scroll down, you'll see that this actually hits that, which I don't want. I want some white space there. So that's an easy fix. I'll just grab the text section and set a padding on the bottom of 256. So now when we scroll down, it's going to hit that padding and push it up. And there we go. So now we want this cursor to have a little cool effect on it. So we want to change the blending mode. So I'm going to go back up to my cursor, double click on it. And for the Explore Designs, we want to go to Styles, and then we want to add a blending. And this is going to be different. So you can play around with these if you want. I want it to be completely different so it contrasts the most. And I'm going to do the same thing on the text because I don't want it to be invisible on black. So we're going to set it to difference. Now you'll notice the text kind of goes away. So to counter that, we have to set this to white. And there we go. So now if we hit play, we come down to the video section, our cursor changes and it's contrasting everything, which is a pretty cool effect. All right, so real quick, one thing I noticed when I was editing this video, I did want to mention this. When I get to the video section and I see the cursor changes, on your screen, you probably will not see my cursor disappear, and that is just due to my recording software. It actually is working. I assure you that my actual mouse cursor does disappear and it just becomes the circle. So just a heads up there, my recording software like simulates the mouse just so it's nice and smooth. So I just wanted to point that out. One other thing I wanted to mention is you can actually go into the cursor and just the normal dot, the default, you can go to the style and just apply the blending mode as well. So now you have the contrast pretty much everywhere, not just in the video section, which is cool. For the next section, let's just go up to layout and grab the column and drag one out. And so now we have our 2 columns here. So for this section, we have some space on the right side, but we really don't have any over here on the left. So with this new created stack, I'm going to call it info section. And the first thing I'm going to do is set the padding. And we're going to have 256 all the way around, except on the left, we're going to have it at 32. The gap will just make 16. It doesn't really matter for this design. And of course, we want to make sure that we drag this in to the desktop. So just click and drag it in. And then I'm just going to drag it all the way down to the bottom. So it's right below our video section. So with that, we can set this to fill, and for the height, and we'll set that to fit content. Then we want to add our minimum height of 700. And now we can start editing the children. So for the first frame on the left, just to keep it nice and organized, I'm going to call this subject. And then the right one is going to be text. So the subject is going to be like the heading, the title of these paragraphs that are going to scroll past. So let's go ahead and add that text. I'm going to hit T on the keyboard and click and add some gibberish. And we'll go in here and make sure this is set to our body alt. And then I will set that to white. And for the line height, you can leave it at 1.2 or you can set it to 1. And so we can see it better, let's grab the subject frame itself, remove the fill color, and let's also add a quick layout to this. The layout in this case, we want it to be on the left. So we'll just change this from center to start, which will push that up to the top, and align it to the left, which will push it over to the left. And then I'm going to zoom in and actually edit my text now. This first section is going to be about web design. So I have for the web, you can completely make this whatever you want. UI design, doesn't matter. And what I want to do here in this one is remove the fill. And we're going to start to add some text into this. So the first thing we need is a heading. So I'm just going to grab one of those. We'll go down to our styles, grab a heading to, and then I'm going to break that link and we'll set this by default to white. And I'm going to put in web design in Figma. And to keep this kind of with the theme of the site, I'm going to change the Figma highlight word to our primary green. And then below that, we're going to have text. So just clicking Option or Alt, you can click and drag down to make a duplicate. And I'm going to set this to our body text, and we will set the color to gray. And then I had ChatGPT write me a little bit of text so it looks more realistic. So I'm going to paste that in. Now you'll notice everything's breaking, but that's because we don't really have a layout set up. So let's grab the text layer itself and add a layout. Again, we want this to start at the top, and center is going to be fine because we're going to have this actually stretch the full width. So we'll just grab this text here, and I'm just going to say on the width, fill, the height, fit. Same thing with the body text. We'll change the width to fill and the height to fit. Now we're going to need some spacing in between these. Instead of adding that here in the text section, what I want to do is I'm going to have multiple sets of paragraphs. I'm actually going to grab the body text, hold shift, and grab the heading, right click, and wrap that with a frame. So now we'll just call this frame paragraph, wrap, or whatever you want to call it. And we'll have multiple of these, so we'll need to add a layout to this. And we need to make sure this is set up properly. So vertical, we want it to start at the top, and we want it to align to the left. Now here we're going to set our gap to 16. And the reason I've done this is so now I can duplicate this, and I can grab the overall text parent and set the gap to something like 80. And we have two really nice paragraphs there with different spacing in between them. So for as many paragraphs as you want, you can just duplicate this and add as many as you need. So I'm going to select both these paragraph wraps and make sure they are set to fill and fit content, just so everything is nice and responsive. Next, let's go to the info section now and make sure the height is set to fit content, which it is. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is make sure the text has a height of fit. So now you'll see the section extends downward. So we're determining the height of this section by how many paragraphs we have. So if we keep adding them, it's going to get longer and longer. And we want this one over here, the subject, to fill, to stretch all the way down to the bottom, because we're going to have this text right here stick, and it's going to stay there as we're scrolling through all of this text. I'm just going to delete these extra paragraphs I added. And I'll update my text real quick. And with that, we can select the text. Make sure you're actually grabbing the text itself and not the subject parent. And we're going to go to the position type and set it to sticky. I'm going to keep this consistent with what we did up here in the text section previously, and I'm going to put it at 256 from the top of the browser. Now, this is not going to work because we have not set overflow to visible for all of its parents. In this case, that is the subject. We want to make sure that is visible. And it is also the info screen, which should be visible. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to make sure we select the info section itself and give this a fill of 900 and make sure we added a z-index of 3. So if you didn't, go to style and make sure you add that. And then we can hit the play button. We scroll down. Now we have this text stick on the side as we scroll down. So the last thing I want to change here is the fraction size. Now, we've not really covered fractions. I've been mentioning them, essentially saying if this is 1F and this is 1F, they're 50% or the same size or one fraction of the parent, which in this case is the info section. We've got padding over here, so that even pushes it even further in. So we have these two. You can see they are the same size. Now, if I were to go and change this one's width to 0.4 fractions, you can see it is now a little bit less than half the size of this one. This one's a little bit more than 2x of this one. And that's it for this section. All we need to do is duplicate it with Command D and update the text if you want another section. For me, I want one for some other stuff. So I'm going to say for the digital space, like app design, UI, UX, all of that. And I'll update the text real quick. So we are almost done with this landing page. We have one more section to knock out, and it's very easy. All we're going to do, drag out a simple frame. Once again, I'm just going to make sure that this is nested inside of the desktop. It's below the info sections here, which it is. And I'm going to call this, you can call it footer section or call to action section, whatever you want. And we need to make sure we do our normal things here. So we want to set the width to fill. The height is going to be viewport, and I'm going to make sure it's 100. And we need to add the minimum height of 700 to prevent this from breaking vertically. For this one, I am going to have the fill at white, so we can leave that. And we always want to make sure we add that z-index of 3 so nothing breaks. And now we'll throw on a quick layout to this. We're going to make sure it is a vertical stack. I want this to be centered and remove the gap. So to do this, it's really simple. There's a pre-built tool right here in Framer. We can go to Insert, Interactive, Ticker. So what this is going to do is it is automatically going to scroll whatever components we link to it by using this right here. Currently, we have none, so let's make one. T on the keyboard, just out here in the pasteboard. I'm going to type in, let's work together, and we're going to go and set this to our heading big. Now, of course, we're going to need to move this over because that is huge. Then right-click, create component, call it whatever you want, and then hit create. And I'm just going to remove the fill it gives it by default, and that's pretty much all we have to do. So from here, we can just go back to the ticker, and I'm going to drag out a wire to that, and you'll see it gives us that inside of the ticker. So if we add this to our page now, we have the ticker, so I'll go ahead and hit play and scroll over down to the bottom. You can see it starts to take that text and to move it. So now what we need to do is grab the ticker and go to the width and set it to fill, and that's it. Now, of course, you can completely customize this. At the bottom, there is a ticker section, and you can edit this. So right now, we have one child. It's just the CTA text. I'm going to add 2 more and just choose the same thing. That way, we have 3 of these in here. So there's never a case if there's a really wide screen. We're going to cover more of the screen by having 3 of them inside of the ticker. It's probably never going to happen, but it's just a safety thing. You can also change the speed, the direction, and I'm going to up the gap a little bit to 80. And then if you want to remove this kind of gradient on the side, just go to clipping and then just lower the width of that to 0. And that is the scrolling text now done. Finally, we need a little bit of footer, and that is the same exact thing we have up here. So I'm just going to grab this, Command C, and scroll all the way back down, select the call to action section and paste that in. And we'll rename this to bottom footer or whatever you want. And since the section's not set up exactly like the hero section, we just need to set this to absolute. And then we're going to set it to the bottom, left, and right, and make sure the bottom is 0. And that will just touch that right down to the bottom. Now for this, we have left, center, and right. We don't even need the center, so I'm just going to hit delete to delete it. Then I'm going to grab the text for both of these in the left and right, and just make sure they are set to like 800 or 900 so we can actually see them. And that's it. That's basically all we need for the rest of the website. So if we keep scrolling down now, we have our nice footer section. You'll notice that our nav docs looks really good. That's going to do it for today's video. That is the rest of the homepage now finished. All we need to do is set up some links on this thing and add a bit of interaction, and it is completely finished. But before we do that, in the next video, we're going to go on to making some of the other pages to fill out this portfolio website. As always, make sure you check out Framer with the link at the top of the description. Framer is really making it accessible for designers to build their own professional websites for clients or like a personal portfolio, as we're doing in this course. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell if you want to be notified for the next part of this course. And as always, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.